started out with like a blowjob.
The Who Do You Think You Are podcast is sponsored by Good Trip Inc. It's a super dope gallery with a super dope artist that owns it. Black owned, 416 South McDowell Street, downtown Raleigh. Y'all come through, check him out. Tell him that SP the Writer sent you.
Owner of Good Trip Tattoo and Art. My passion is creating art, and there's no better feeling than seeing a happy client.
It's dope because we've had a lot of conversations over the past few years, and never necessarily like sitting down with some lights, over us and everything on a podcast,
Right?
But I think it'll be enlightening for me. Hopefully for you a little bit.
Absolutely.
And then hopefully for the audience. But particularly for me, because I'm so, you know me, man, I'm super inquisitive about who and how people function in their lives. And so, of course, man, the name of the podcast is Who Do You Think You Are? And so I've seen Lee Chapman, the son. I've seen, Lee the poet. Now I've seen Johnny Verena. So I'm going to ask you, who do you think you are?
Look, I think I'm 6 people sitting down at a table at a given time, and it's almost like, in a way, it's like there's a manager, and the manager just like spreads out cards and says like, everybody pick one. Whoever gets the one is gonna be in charge today. And some days there's like the same person showing up. But
Right.
then other times it's like, no, we wanna go make some music. Like I wanna go pick up the guitar and do that for my morning process as opposed to like edit and write, because I'm feeling that way today. But
Right.
just giving myself space to not be constrained, honestly. Like that's
Yeah.
who I think I am. Like Johnny Lee Chapman III.
Yeah.
Those names in themselves is like already like personalities. Cause when I was a dental hygienist, I would go by Johnny. When I was a student, Johnny. It's the professional, it's the government name.
Yeah.
It's things that if somebody is reading in attendance, that's the first name that they see.
Yeah.
And if I don't feel the need to say, let me correct you and call me Lee, it's okay for me to be called Johnny. It's also confusing because a lot of people don't know what to call me when they meet me. They're like, okay, which name do you prefer? And I'm
Right.
like, I can go with either. They're
Either.
like, but what do you want me to call you? I'm like, you're putting a lot of pressure.
Right.
I'm giving you options and you just decide. I will answer to both of them.
Right.
And then like Lee, I started going by Lee because, I'm a third.
Okay.
So growing up in church, like, I was like, oh, there's little Johnny, there's little Johnny, there's
Right.
little Johnny. And I'm like, this is cool, but like, I want to be my own person.
Yeah.
And I can remember my mom also like starting to call me Lee. And it's ironic because my mom, my dad, both my grandfathers' middle name is Lee.
Okay.
So it's almost like this random
lineage.
legacy
Yeah.
and lineage. And for me to be the one who has it. And then my grandmas are Lena and Elise. So I'm like,
Wow,
y'all
it's
really just
all
like-
in there.
Yeah, y'all just like
Oh.
this sound.
I wonder if that was purposeful on their part.
I don't know. So then I also think about like the poem Lee.
Yeah.
And I was like, you have no idea that this is so meta for me right now. So I think it's...
And before we go on, take your mic and put it like this, but no, so it won't even, just clip it down in the middle.
like
On
this.
the inside. Yeah, down there. Right now in the bottom, right where your button is. Yep. Just clip it right in. Yeah, there you go.
There it
It'll
is.
catch you a little bit better.
There it is. Perfect.
Yeah, so you said that the poem Lee was
Super meta.
Yeah.
Super meta, because I'm like, that's my name, and that's what I've like attributed, especially in terms of art. Like I don't really go by Johnny in the art scene,
Right,
Like
at all.
unless it's now Johnny
Johnny
Verena.
Verena, right.
But that's also because like I'm putting the Verena for Fuquay Verena,
Fuquay,
because
right.
I'm like, one, I'm gonna make sure everybody knows how to say that name properly,
Yeah.
because it's a cool name. It's where I'm from. But two, I can't think of any like black artists who've made it out of Fuquay, like made a statement from Fuquay. So there's like this open door for somebody to be that. And I'm
Right.
like, well, if I can have the opportunity to do that, I would love to do it.
Right.
You know, so that's where the Johnny Varina comes from. But essentially, like, Lee is how it moves in the art world and like the social scene. But again, it just depends. Whoever's best for the job will be the version of me I need to be.
That
I'm pretty
particular day.
adaptable.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, and you brought up the poem Lee. We're not necessarily going to go into the poem per se, but like, what were your thoughts when I sent that to you, knowing that what your middle name means to you and your lineage? Then there was a poem titled Lee that was written by somebody else whose middle name is Lee, and then it has this connection to, you know, my father, obviously. So like, what was going on through your mind with that particular piece?
Yeah, it was all that to start off with. All that was
All
going
that,
in my
everything.
mind. Yeah, because it's like, it's somebody else's words.
Yeah.
It's somebody else's story, but there's so many connecting points and similarities amongst that I could find bits and pieces of myself.
Right.
But then I could also find gaps where it wasn't even related to me at all. But then it's kind of figuring out, well, what can I do to fill in the gaps? Like, I never had, you know, I have different relationship with my father than you did. So
Right.
it's like, how do I make sure I can channel what needs to be channeled? So
Right.
maybe I detach myself from my experience with my own dad and like lean into what your experience was based off of what you sent. And then it
Right.
was always like, did this get written specifically for me? Like, could anybody else have performed Lee except for me?
I don't think so.
I don't.
And I remember when I wrote it, and I was just like, it's crazy that this is the poem, because I wrote a poem. I've only written 2 poems about my dad.
Yeah.
That one, and then there was one called I want to say it was called Santa Claus.
Whoa.
And this is early Facebook days.
Ooh.
And I may go back and read that just to see what's going on with it and revamp it. But basically talking about, no, he is not real. And I use Santa Claus as that, and so then, you know, just kind of whatever. But yeah, when I wrote it, I was like, yo, it made sense to me because I knew you as Lee. My middle name is Lee. I'm a junior, but my dad's middle name is Leo. So it's like, am I really a junior? Like, was that the disconnect? And so I was like, I just felt like you were the only, and I haven't even thought about anybody else performing that piece.
That was wild, yeah. And I was like, I kept thinking like, this is me. Like, and that was the last piece of the night that I think I performed.
That you did, yeah.
And there was so much like intensity. And this is even after like Black consciousness had got done. And I just remember like, I'm standing there in the pink pants and the turtleneck,
Right.
and I'm like, woo, just channeling so much in that moment. And I can just remember like the crowd's responses to that piece.
Yeah.
And I was just, you know, thankful. I'm always thankful to be able to like bring your work to life. But that one was like, yeah, that's a solidified spot in the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you get it? How did you get into like performing poetry, period?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this. I started off
Right.
as like a Tumblr poet writing,
Right.
and I would just, you know, post some like sad, depressive stuff up there. But that's what I was going through at the time, freshman year at UNC, and I was
Right.
like, a lot of change, and I suffered from insomnia, and like writing was my release. I didn't start thinking about performing until maybe my freshman year at UNC. We had a spoken word group called EROT, Ebony Readers Onyx Theater, which is super cool. Like, is the first time I got introduced into spoken word. Not like a lot of people come in from like button poetry and like
Right.
Rudy Francisco and all these other names, and I'm like, I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I just saw what was on campus. I saw campus poets and student poets.
Right.
And I was just blown away like by some of their words, the way that they could just command a stage. And I kept writing, and it probably wasn't until I remember the first time I ever performed out loud. And I will say that before then, you know, growing up in a Black church, you're on stage for productions,
Right.
Easter,
All the time.
Christmas,
Yeah.
you're doing something. So
Bible verse.
yeah. So I was always okay with like showing up on a stage. I was okay with, you know, taking lines. Like I can remember one thing one of those church plays we did about Columbine. I don't know why, but like it was about like a janitor who was cleaning up the school afterwards, and I was the lead. I was a janitor.
Oh, wow.
And like just being able to like take people through this story, and then I was in Grease, the play Grease in 7th grade.
Okay.
And again, just feeling comfortable on stage,
Right.
using my voice, using the body. But it wasn't until my sophomore to junior summer that I did my first poetry piece,
Okay.
and it bombed. It bombed.
As many first time things do.
I know, and I was like, I'm never doing this again. But then my senior year, it was my art journey. I'd stopped writing for a while.
Okay.
And I remember like this was like the lowest point of my college career, like junior to senior year. Like dental hygiene was such a difficult program, and then trying to balance a student life with being a professional student and everything else. Like
Right.
so, like in full disclosure, like I almost tried to commit suicide like my junior year
Wow.
in my dorm room. And I can remember like 3 weeks later, I was having a conversation with like a friend in a summer program, and she was like, you know, you should be writing. Like you need to write.
Right,
And
get it out.
I got back into writing, and then my senior year, I told myself, I want to try out for the spoken word group. I went to my first open mic my senior year. I performed a poem about, it was called Alcoholics Anonymous, because it's something that runs in my family.
Okay.
My grandfather was an alcoholic, and it's like knowing that exists in the back of your head is always like this point in the back saying like, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
You got to be mindful, because you can walk down that same road. I spit that, and then the people on the team were like, yeah, you need to try out. Like, and I was like, as a senior, I'm really only gonna have 1 year to do it.
Right.
But I made it, and it changed, because then it was not just poetry on the page. It was, now you're performing for the students. Like, you're performing for people. We had a show, our first show was about fear.
Right.
And I can remember doing a duet with another poet. Like, my first time ever spitting a piece with another person on stage at the same time. So like,
Wow.
it's what kickstarted. So I have a lot to thank for EROT, and it's still a great thriving group on campus, and it's geared towards Black students. And I mean, it's open to everybody, but like when you see, you know, almost everybody in the group is Black or a minority or
Right.
some kind of, you know, in that sense, you feel also a sense of like community. So
Right.
I've always had a community of spoken word artists, and I think that's what's given me the confidence to do a lot of the things I've done with spoken word. It's the community.
Right. Yeah, I see that the community around it is really big. With artists in general, but then when you start segmenting it, especially with spoken word,
Yep.
It's a very I want to say tight knit.
I was gonna say the same word. Yes,
for
that's it.
lack of a better phrase, even if it isn't, and sometimes it appears that way, and then it can be and feels that way too. So that's super dope. That's how long ago was that for you?
That was 2014, so we're coming up on 7 years.
Wow.
That's when I got, 2014 was when I got, well, late 2013, 2014 was when I got
Okay.
into the spoken word group.
Man, so you've been performing since you were a kid. So once you got to with the spoken word group, did your natural instincts kick in? Were you nervous when you were going up on stage? Like, how was that?
Oh yeah, I still get nervous now. You saw
Yeah.
me Thursday. I
Yeah.
was like,
look, I know when you put the headphones on, I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, he's a little-
headspace.
right.
Headspace. But
What do you listen to?
hard rock.
Hard rock?
You want to hear a track right now?
Yeah, sure, why not?
This is what I was listening to that day. to
I've
get my
always
headspace.
wondered, like, yo, what does he listen to? Is he listening to symphony music? Is he listening to rap? Is he listening to R&B? Is he listening to Johnny Varina? You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what is Lee listening to?
So it varies, but like I have a process where I will start with something. I will start with like symphony and instrumentals because that calms the mind. But then when it gets closer to the actual performance time, it's like, no, it's time to crank
rev
it
up.
up. So this is what I was jamming to. It's called Helena by My Chemical Romance.
Put it toward the mic so they can hear it a little bit too.
So we're in this R&B place.
Right.
Everybody's getting ready to sing harmonizers, and I'm over here just like in the back corner jamming out to this.
That's crazy.
So a lot of things make more sense, right?
A lot of things make more sense. Now when I see you, I'm like, yo, he's over there with some Led Zeppelin playing real quick.
High key.
That's crazy.
So
yo.
that's what I listen to, but it's all about getting in that headspace because I still get nervous. But those beginning times, I think the nerves they're different than they are now.
Right.
Like I was nervous because am I gonna mess up? Am I gonna stumble? And am I like do I know my poem?
Right.
These kind of questions. And now it's more like, will the message be received?
Right.
Will I be able to connect with somebody? Will I be able to like make that eye contact? And can at least one person walk away from my performance with something different?
Right.
So that's what the nerves are. I mean, it's still also like, am I gonna fumble? Because
Yeah,
that's
that
always
happens.
a risk.
Yeah.
Always a risk. But I can remember one of the bigger performances I had was after UNC, I did a post back in UNC Charlotte, and that's when I got into photography too. So like that's part of the art journey. Like I picked up a photo studio job.
Right.
It was a lot. It was really a lot. Like you're taking pictures of 1-year-olds, so you got to like act like a goofy little giraffe every now and then. So it was a lot.
The
but
kids.
I got into another spoken word group at UNC Charlotte as a post-bac student, and one of the performances we had was like in the main hall auditorium, and there's like layers
Levels.
of
Yeah.
people, and I can remember like dropping this piece about like being like blacking out, like comparing like a famous blackout in New York City to like
Okay.
college life, being too drunk, because they were like, yeah, we want you to write a piece about college experience.
Right.
So I can remember that performance and just like seeing it, and just that was a moment when I was like, okay, this is something I really, really want to continue to pursue,
Right.
not just something that I enjoy doing, but
Right.
I'm able to like warp a whole space and place with just words.
Right.
And that's you get a little power trip from
A
it.
little power trip.
We're
Little
not
power
gonna
trip.
you're not gonna deny that.
Right. So what did that do at the time for your mental health?
Oh, it was a boost. It was one of the few things that was really good because I was still suffering some anxiety at that time. Like I was in therapy at this time, and that's what people don't know. Like I've been in therapy since like 2012, 2013 for on and off. And as a black man going into therapy, it's almost like, especially like
That
8
young,
years ago,
yeah.
it's a real different conversation than now talking about,
Right.
of course. It's like, so mentally, art, for the most part, art was my saving grace.
Right.
Now, there are some instances where it was like the opposite. And I think that that's the thing that people also need to consider, that everybody thinks that art is always healing and therapeutic.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Not
nah, low
always.
key, you got to work through some, not all pieces come through from like heavy stuff, but every once in a while, you got to like trudge through that grit and that dirt to pull something out. And it does end up like hurting you. It
Right.
does end up taking a piece from you. But for the most part, the pieces I was writing, the ability to express myself and be on stage and just be invited and have people listen to the thoughts that were in my head at this time. It was a blessing. It was much of a blessing.
Gotcha. What brought you to, moving back a little bit, and you said that you try to take your life in your dorm room. What led up to that moment?
It was an amalgamation of things. Like it wasn't just a one instance and it was like, let's go.
Right.
It was a semester. It was a difficult semester. I think we had 20 hours. And what people don't understand, when I went through college, is very different than other people. So my first 2 years was undergrad like everybody else.
Okay.
But then my junior and senior year, I was a practicing dental hygienist.
Wow.
So I'm working on living patients and I'm cleaning like community teeth.
Right.
And some people are like, yeah, we can just skip class and go to lunch and hang out at the random place. And I'm
You're
like,
nah, I gotta go to work.
my schedule 8 to 5 was structured every day. I didn't even choose my classes. So you have a 20-year-old who you're saying all of a sudden you have to abide by this schedule.
Right.
The grading scale was ridiculously difficult. You couple in the fact that I'm going through insomnia. I'm still trying to keep up with my extracurricular activities. I was being pulled in so many different directions. I had just become an alpha the semester before, so I think at that time we were dealing with like bringing in a new line essentially,
Right.
and there's things going with that. There's all these pieces that were pulling and pulling and pulling, and then you throw in college drinking culture on top of that, and I'm like, wow, this is a really unhealthy thing. And then it was finals week. It was after my last final, because finals week is like hell week.
Right.
You're grinding. You don't sleep. You're jacked up on Red Bull and energy drinks, and you're stressed out because literally your entire grade is going to be determined by this next test.
Right.
So all those stressors and factors combined, and I can remember the day. It was a gray, rainy day, and I'd gone to get a burrito from this restaurant, and I had a conversation with a friend of mine then, and we had pretty much a falling out. And from that conversation, I can remember like biking back right before the rain happens and just like locking myself in my dorm and going through this difficult process and writing a note, like thinking about how I write nowadays, but there's also a point in my life where I wrote the end of my own life. And I think it's something interesting when somebody has the ability to choose to take their own life, because it's different than life being taken from you.
Right.
But you're saying, I'm consciously saying I don't want this anymore. I have never really like that feeling to know that at some point I could take it, but then at the same time, it's like I also have the choice to live my life.
Right.
I also have the choice to embrace everything that comes with it. And just getting to that point, surviving it, I had like 42 scars on my wrist. Like some of them are still visible to this day. So like, I called my dad after it happened, and he like came and picked me up, like took me out the dorm, bloody hands and all. And like, I remember my cousin was graduating like 3 days later, and like from ODU, and I'm showing up in the hot summer day,
Long sleeves.
long sleeves, and I was like, I could not wrap my head around it. And I could not wrap my head around it. But then come to find out, my dad had mental health issues, not suicide ideation, but like OCD and anxiety and things of that nature. And now, actually, think about it, he did have some suicide ideation. Ironically, when I was born, he had like postpartum depression in a sense.
Wow.
So
you don't hear about that with men much.
Exactly. So it was an eye-opening moment for both of us to be able to like have this traumatic experience, but have each other to kind of get through it.
Gotcha.
And like, oh, maybe all of this isn't just me and situation. Maybe some of this is low-key ingrained in my DNA, but how do I un-ingrain it so, you know, there's not going to be a Johnny Lee Chapman the fourth. We're just not putting that name out there. It's going to be a cool name, but
Right.
it's like I want to make sure that even if it does get passed down, how can we make sure that you can move through it, you can live through it, and not, you know, make decisions like that.
So have you always been close with your dad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, he's been a good father to me, and we're tight. We sometimes have a little bit of issue when it comes to communicating. That's because he works in tech. He actually works at Red Hat, so he's right down the road. But for the most part, he's been a great dad. You know,
That's what's
he's
up.
looked out for my family in so many different ways. Always like provider, but good man. Like I went to go get my edge up the other day. My barber, she's been cutting my hair for like almost 15, 20 years now herself, and she was like, you know, your dad is just a good man. And I was like, ain't he though? Ain't he though?
Yo, and it's so good to be, because a lot of people can't say that.
Yeah.
Did you know or realize growing up the how big that was to be able to have a good man as your dad?
I didn't until I went to Southeast, because the environment around Southeast, it's smack dab on Rock Quarry.
Yeah.
Like the hood is right around it. It's surrounded by it in different areas. So it wasn't until then when I started realizing, like, yo, a lot of my black friends, because I grew up with black friends in the church, but when it comes to school and like the community, not so much. But to come to Southeast, to have all these black friends, and then a lot of them are like, not a whole lot, but there's a good portion that are like, yeah, either my dad's absent, my dad's not there, my dad's in prison, these kind of like tumultuous situations from families. And I'm sitting up here like, well, my dad just like bought me like clothes the other day. And I did struggle with that. I don't think a lot of people talk about like the struggle of being a black man, and also like knowing that you do have a good dad, because you, unfortunately, you kind of feel a little bit isolated from everybody else. And that's a really sick thing to think, like, wow, I have a good dad, but I feel less black. I even wrote a poem about this. Like, oh yeah, it was called Father's Day, and I wrote about like those very same situations. Like, wow, I can remember being like, maybe if I didn't have a dad, could I be like more rooted in my blackness?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy, the things that happen, or the way society is, and the things that happen within society that make us invert what should actually be.
Exactly. Mind blowing, right?
That's crazy. It's like I was joking with somebody one day, and I was like, yo, Chick-fil-A has created this culture so much so that you could go to Chick-fil-A, ask for a certain thing, they get your order wrong, and you'd be like, dang, I probably ordered it wrong.
Right.
Like it inverts your way of thinking, because you're so used to something being this particular way, and you think, oh, that's what's right. Like, and it can't be wrong.
Pavlov's dog, we just getting conditioned, waiting for that ding, 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 ding. Food is here.
Speaking of conditions, you just spoke on that. What things were you conditioned in that were hard for you to break out of, that you actually broke out of?
Yeah, the first one was definitely the mental health, since that's been like a topic here. Like having, again, 2012, I'm 19 years old. I remember having my first anxiety attack, and then like having to go to therapy.
Right.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Like taking medication? Like, whoa.
Right.
Just that sense in itself, because, you know, growing up, it's always like, oh, that's white people shit.
Yeah.
That's what white folks do.
Right.
They go talk to their problems, but then having to reconcile with that was one of the big things. And I think, you know, through my own journey, through mental health, through therapy, and also through art, because, you know, the piece we did for the Black on Black project, that first piece I got a chance to do, Break the Silence, is literally talking about blacks and mental health, and using different examples like family dynamics, church dynamics, community dynamics, and realizing that all of these things were the conditioning points, even if they didn't know they were conditioning us to believe that. Like, I think one of the lines was, and God said, let there be light, but my uncle say black don't ever break.
Yep.
Like, what?
I
Like,
remember
yeah,
that.
you gotta be strong as a black man.
Right.
You gotta be so rigid that you don't show any emotion. So that was one of the big things.
What's something that you've put a thumb on now? Like, okay, I've recognized that I've been conditioned with this right here, and you're working to break out of that, if anything.
I think, like, what does it mean to be an artist? I know that's like a very like a professional artist, because I'm at this point now where it's like I'm scratching the surface of this next level, and wondering like the culture of art, like the concept of like Hemingway, and you gotta be on substances to write.
Right.
Like, people ask me all the time, or like, you know, what do you do? Like, do you get high? Do you get drunk when you write? I'm like, maybe back in the day, but now, like, no, I'm a stone cold sober writer.
Gotcha.
And when it's up to performing, like, I'm not gonna have a drink or do anything until after I'm done performing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I had to reconcile with, especially amongst like indie culture.
Yeah.
Like, being individual artists is like, nah, man, we get ourselves in the zone, you know, we unlock our third eye. And I'm like, no, y'all are closing that.
Right.
Like, maybe a little here and there, but that's one of the things, is like breaking down what is it like, the process of being an artist, and what is what does that look like, especially in terms of finances too, because we're conditioned to believe that if we make money off our art,
Then-
we're selling out.
Right.
And you're like,
No.
you're selling, not selling out.
Exactly.
And you need financial freedom leads to other forms of freedom. So if you deny yourself financial freedom, you're gonna have to pick it up from somewhere else, and then you're taking away time from your art. So having to like, you know, reconcile with that, especially after like I lost my job from the pandemic. So to like I've been a full-time artist since March of last year.
Got you.
And like making money off of art and surviving and living and doing these things, as opposed to like I gotta have the 9 to 5 and then I gotta have from 5 to 9 I'm working on my other thing. It's like, no, at some point I wanted to take that jump. So that is what I'm tiptoeing my way through, and shooting your shot.
Yeah.
You know, just saying like, hey, look, maybe this is good for me. Maybe the denials are okay. Maybe I do shoot and I get one yes. And we were talking
Right.
about this again. It's
Yeah.
just, you can never really grow yourself until you start putting yourself out there. So just having to come to terms with that. And I think the last thing, and my mom was joking with me about this, is asking for help as an artist. Because I'm me.
Right.
I know everything, you
Right.
know, but I don't. But just having to learn to like when to ask,
Yeah.
when to say like, hey, there's a thing that I don't know, and you've already mentioned that you're willing to give an answer to me. So
Yeah.
let me reach out to you.
Yeah.
Let me talk to you, because you have something that I can benefit from.
Right.
Essentially. So asking for help has been a tricky thing, but working through it now is like, it works.
Yeah.
There's a reason help and assistance exists.
Right. Yeah, I was talking to one of my friend's son. He's 19. And, you know, dad trying to tell him certain things and this and that and the other. He ain't listening, blah, blah.
Right.
And I just told him, I'm like, yo, life is already hard. Just the stuff that just normal, people gonna die, people get sick, you know, you get your heart broken. Like, just normal life is hard.
Normal.
And I'm like, don't make your life any harder than it has to be by not seeking help from people who have already experienced a certain, you know, caliber of life. And I'm like, yo, your dad has these answers, blah, blah, blah. And so I think, I sit and I think about that a lot too, because I'm like, is my life, I haven't had a hard life, right? I've had hard moments.
Yeah.
But I'm like, am I even making my life harder than it has to be? Like, as I said it to him, when I got in the car, I'm like, damn, like, am I really, like, using the experiences that other people have and allowing them to steer me as much as I should so that I don't drive into that pothole
Right.
and mess up my, you know, my axle or...
Especially when they already said detour right here.
Right.
They already put the signs up and you're just gonna ignore them? Like, why?
Right.
Why would you want to do that?
Why do we do that?
It's because some people gonna call it ego. I just think because we just think we know. Everybody thinks we know. Everybody, no matter what, until you get to a realization where you don't know. And the best people are the people who know that they don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I put up something, I think about a week ago on Instagram. I said, once I understood everything, I knew nothing. Something similar to say, you know, I never know my lines.
Hey, look, you and me both.
But I think the older I get, the more I understand that I don't know as much as I thought I knew. And
Exactly.
it's crazy how much your brain can stretch, because you get it stretched and you're like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I know more than that. And then it's like, oh no, it just got 2 times bigger.
Yeah, and then think about the internet and how much we all of a sudden realize we really don't know, because you could Google something every single day and learn a new fact.
Right.
Humans have never had that luxury to learn at the rate that we're doing now. So there is a lot of like unknownness in this world, and I think that's what's driving some of the stuff for better or worse. Like
Right.
the unknown is at the forefront. That's the next frontier people are talking about, like the internet. And
That's why sci-fi is so big, because it's part of the known. You take a little bit of the known and then you just expand on it into the unknown. And it gets your mind in a
Oh,
whole
yeah.
entirely different place.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I know you're big on sci-fi.
Oh yeah. You're talking. I'm working on a manuscript right now, and like the basic premise was like, what's the next step in human evolution? That was my question for myself. And I've done a lot of research, and a lot of people believe in this concept called the singularity.
Okay, explain that.
So the singularity is, there's two events. The singularity is one, in the astrophysics term, it's the point of a black hole, where I think the gravity is condensed into like zero.
Right.
But everything else is swirling around it. And, you know, a black hole is like, sucks away light, everything
Yeah.
else. The singularity in terms of like technology is this point where man and machine are gonna become one, and they're never gonna be able to split apart again. And it doesn't also, it means biologically, but also like socially, economically, financially. And one of the big proponents of it, this guy named Ray Kurzweil, he believes that that's showing up in 2045.
That's right around the corner.
Yes, because technology
going
doesn't
so
grow
fast.
like this. Technology grows like this,
Yeah.
exponential. So every time something gets better, it gets better. I was talking to my dad about this the other day. Like 40 years ago, a computer was the size of a room.
Right.
And it couldn't even do 1/3 of the stuff that our
At all.
phones do.
At all.
At all. So you think about, that's in 40 years. What's another 20 years gonna do to us? So the singularity was like, okay, that was the starting point. What does the next step of human evolution look like? What does the next step of human biology look like? And so I started running with that for the idea for my series, and it's been a thrill. But it's
Right.
again taking something that I know is true, such as the human body, but then saying, what can we do to the human body to make it damage resistant, to
Right.
make it regenerate itself, to make it heat and cold resistant,
that's
to make it prepared
crazy.
for space travel? Like, how can we change this? Because it's a body, it's a vessel, but it's also like, you know, it's partly a machine,
Right.
in its own way. So how can we enhance this machine that we've been born with, that low key is already faulty?
Yeah.
Like, it's a very faulty
Very
machine.
much. Very much.
You don't
so.
even be knowing what's going on in your body.
At
That's what's
all.
wild.
And I've learned a little bit just through the clinical trials.
Oh yeah.
I've learned, you know, some about my body, but then even still, there's so many things that I don't know about my body and how it functions and why it functions a certain kind of way. That stuff is real mind-blowing when you really start kind of digging into the thoughts behind how everything works and why it doesn't work a different way and
yeah.
why it fails.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. Like, I think about how some people just die. Like, there was nothing that was there there was no warning sign or nothing. They just
Drop.
aneurysm.
Drop. Yeah. That happened to a kid in my Southeast. We had homeroom together. And one day they were just like, yeah, he was a quiet dude who used to sit in the corner, but like, one day
He
they were just
died
like,
during-
not during class, but like, it just showed up and he was like, yeah, he just died of an aneurysm. Like, what do you mean? Like, he was just in class like 3 days ago. He's our age, and you're telling me you can go like that? I don't know. I think about mortality a lot. I think about death like, I think a lot more than most people do, but I think it's healthy to think about death.
Right.
Because it goes to show you that we are not immortal. And we get that wrapped up in our heads so much. It's like, I'm invincible, I'm immortal, I can never be brought down until that steady decline happens.
Right.
But I think like being faced with my own death from my own hands, and then I had a terrible car accident on my 18th birthday.
Oh, wow.
That almost took my life. Like, the sheriff was like, yeah, there's no way you should have walked out of there. And I'm like, here I am walking out. Seeing those two instances gave me a completely different perspective on life.
Right.
You know, like, wow, this can be taken at any single moment.
Right.
So why would you want to sit here and like waste it? Why would you want to conform and continue to do things that don't align with what you really want?
Right.
Because once it's gone, you can believe in reincarnation, you can believe in
Right.
heaven, you can believe
But
in all
this
that.
one's gone.
But you're never going to be, this body, mind, and spirit are never going to be aligned in the same way that they are as they are right now.
Right.
You might have the same soul, but it's going to be in a completely different body, in a completely different environment.
Right.
You might have, your consciousness might go into the ether, but it's never going to be attached to the spiritual process that is working through you. And your body, that's just going to be food for the girl, for the ground, for the earth, for the fish, wherever you go.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Was that accident, was that before or after the suicide attempt?
That was before. That accident was the starting point, I think, of like a lot of stuff. It started my insomnia. I can remember one of the first anxiety. I didn't even know it was an anxiety attack. I was watching The Blind Side with my family after the accident happened. And there's that scene in it when they literally get blindsided.
Right.
And I ran out of the room and like had to like scream into a pillow. And I didn't know what was going on. And nobody knew what was going on at the time.
Right.
But this is like a month after this accident. It was a head-on collision. And again, it's my 18th birthday. 18 is like synonymous with like, you're now an adult. Now's your time to live your life. And I spent my birthday in a hospital. You know? So just that juxtaposition and that contrast between you're now an adult, you're now able to live, but you also could have just got right then and there.
That's crazy.
Yep, so it kickstarted a lot of the mental health. The journey began with the car accident, I would say.
Do you feel like that car accident was ultimately a good thing?
Yeah, in hindsight. I mean, I broke a thumb. I broke my right thumb, which is ironic, and to think like everything I do now, like I write, I cleaned teeth, like all of it required use of a thumb and my ring finger. I've broken my ring finger twice, so I don't know if that's like symbolic. I'm just waiting, like 2 failures of marriage. I don't know. I hope not.
I hope not.
But to be able to walk out from that car accident, and you know, yes, it might have kickstarted that journey, but I also think about all the other things that came along with my journey. I think about now embracing writing as a way I would combat the insomnia by writing. Yeah. And then by writing on Tumblr, I eventually went and spoke it. And because I spoke it, I was able to but then I stopped writing. Right. And then I had the attempt. But then after the attempt, I started writing again. And then I brought it to the stage, and then I started performing. But then I had anxiety, but then I conquered the anxiety by expanding what I was able to perform and going out from just the university setting to the community. And it's just been every step has been a forward step. Like one of the things we learned in Alpha is like no backward steps. Yeah. Like everything is a progression towards something, even if it's like a misstep or a bad step. A misstep still has the word step in it. So you still stepping.
Still stepping. That's powerful. I listen to a lot of rap music. Jay-Z's probably, top couple artists. He's always talking about, forward progression. Loiterers should be arrested. One of my favorite lines by him ever. Very short but poignant.
Get to the point.
And so I look at it and I'm listening to you talk about, the forward progress and making sure you're even if it's a misstep. Yeah. Slow motion is better than no motion, Kanye, you know what I mean? And honestly. I think a lot of people lose that in whether it be in artistry, whether it be in life, whether it be in whatever. I know like watching you guys perform, like I think spoken word artists are like the coolest people like ever. Spoken word and rappers, you know what I'm saying? They're both one and the same. I think it's like, like if I could do that, it's almost like, how some girls who look really good, they're really smart, they can do everything, but they ain't got no ass. And they be like, if God had given me an ass, and I'd be trouble. And I'm like, had God given me the ability to like be really good at like performing or rapping or something like that, it'd be a rap because I know like how my mind is set up. I know how my ego can be set up. Yep. And it'd be crazy. So I watch y'all perform, and even in instances, because I've had people ask me like, well, what happens or how do you feel when a poet messes up? I'm like, I really don't care. Yeah. Now I care if the whole poem bombs. You know what I mean? Different. But when there's an instance where it messes up, it literally becomes. That's what the poem becomes for me because that's what it was supposed to be. Like there's a part in Black Conscience where you like jumble your words.
Oh yeah.
And so I know that particular poem,
Yeah.
word for word, but I have literally forgotten what actual words I use where you jumbled it up. And I actually, when I'm reciting it to myself or looking at it, I just say whatever you said, because like that's what it was in that moment. And
It's
so
like a
that
script.
lives for me.
It's like a script.
Yeah.
When you think about actors, they take the script and sometimes they stick true to every single line. But
Yeah.
there are other times where it's like maybe this feels a little bit more right to
Right.
drop in there. So yeah. And sometimes it's also like I literally forgot, so I'm just gonna like fill in the blanks.
Right.
But we're still gonna I know the next talking point I can get to.
Exactly. How do you do that? How do y'all do that? How do you go from being in a room and you're talking, you're joking, and then, 5 or 10 minutes later, you're on stage and you're having to recall not just the words, but emotions that are attached to those words and be able to spit that out in succession that way?
Hey, look, I'll tell you, my process starts the morning I wake up. Like it starts, if I know if it's like an open mic or something, it's not so much, but if I know I have like a big performance, or even if it's one performance or like 3 or 4, it starts that morning. So like, I'll have like a real easy morning. Like I probably won't edit or do anything like that.
Right.
I try and do some physical activity. Like I'll either go run, go to the gym,
Okay.
something to get the body woken up. Because when on stage, it's not just your voice, it's your body too.
Right.
So like you gotta feel comfortable with how you're moving and shifting and all that other stuff. Sometimes I will journal, but I won't always journal about the performance coming up. Maybe I
Right.
will, but most often it's like just journaling again, it's it's waking up the mind. It's emptying all the thoughts so that I can start focusing. And then I'll rehearse.
Yeah.
I do most of my best rehearsals in the shower. My
A
water
lot
will
of
be
people,
looking
I've heard a
high.
lot of people say that.
Yeah, my water will be looking a little rough sometimes, but I'm like, it's all for the art.
Right.
It's all for the art.
You might be able to write your water bill off on your taxes.
It's not a bad idea. Like, yeah, this is actually like performance time, rehearsal space.
I'm pretty sure you can finagle that.
My shower is my rehearsal space.
Right.
I like that. So going through all that and then getting to the venue and giving myself the space to know that like there is the community there.
Right.
Sometimes I will just like isolate myself and really won't talk to anybody if I know that there's a certain performance. Like,
Right.
if it's going to be a little bit heavier. Other times it's like, yes, I want to joke and I want to laugh because like I need to do that too.
Takes the edge off a little.
Yeah, like I don't just want to be sometimes so locked into the process that I forget everything else that's going on around. And I
Right.
can be guilty of that sometimes. Like I will definitely just do
Zone
my own
out.
thing. Yeah.
Take me through. So I saw you perform at Dorothea Dix,
Yeah.
and that was really heavy.
That was heavy.
And it actually taught me some things about Dorothea Dix that I didn't know, and the history behind the park. So take me through that particular day, because I know your parents were there
Yeah.
for some of part of the performance. Take me through that.
Yeah, so it starts with like the writing of the piece.
Yeah.
It starts with like having to reconcile that I've lived in this area for, I think at the time, I think it was 2018, so I've been there for like 27 years of my
Right.
life, and I did not know the history of this place that has literally been a staple spot of Raleigh. So the reconciliation of that alone, the
Right.
changing of the perspective, and then to realize like we're about to perform this for the city.
Yeah.
Like these aren't art aficionados. These aren't spoken word audience members. These are just community. Anybody who walks into this place. It's a hot day.
Yeah, it was hot.
Oh, it was so hot.
It was hot.
And we're wearing black.
Right.
And Mike has the stage set up. And, I give all credit to like the Black on Black project because they're always so great with creating the space for me and other artists to be able to like really just immerse ourselves in it 100%. Like
Right.
we're standing at this building that was originally like where some of the slaves lived.
Right.
So there's all this energy that's subtle, just locked into the ground. There's these markers with the names of at least 61 of the enslaved people.
Right.
So you can physically see the remnants of their lives. And then comes the performance. And for me, like, I remember that day, I was listening to, once again, had my headphones on, jamming out to some heavy metal.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm behind the building, just bobbing and getting on my feet and getting, like, in the zone. There's something, I listen to that kind of music, like, before soccer games and before practice. I used to listen to that and, like, other really heavy banging music before tests, too. Because there's something about that kind of music that puts me in a nice trance. And it allows me to, like, I think it's almost a shedding of me sometimes. Because I also think that every performance requires a particular character. And that's what I try and do. And I learned that from your shows, is like, who do I need to be for this performance?
Right.
Who do I need to be for this line? And I think being as adaptable as I am at times, it works in my favor to be able to say, like, okay, this is going to be sultry, suave, and smooth for this one. But this time, I need to be the bearer of history and a messenger and a prophet and all these other things. But it doesn't always mean that that's who I'm going to be after the show is over.
Yeah.
So the music sheds Lee, allows me to be whoever that performance needed. And that one was like, to be a voice for these people who never had a chance to tell their stories. And I remember 4 performances we did that day.
Yeah.
4.
I think I was there for like at least 2 of them. Yeah. So how was that going through that 4 times in the same day?
Heavy. And it only got, but it got better as we continued to do it more.
Right.
Because it's like there was a point where, like, it stopped being rehearsal and it stopped being recitation and started being like a lived experience for me. And by that 4th performance, like, it's so powerful, and I'm juiced up in it because it was only like 15-minute intervals too between it. Yeah. And I've heard myself perform it so many times now that I'm, not to say that I didn't believe the words before, but they're ingrained into me now. Like, that performance is ingrained. And to think, like, after the 4th performance, I'm not gonna lie, a giant tree snapped. One of the trees right next to the building, huge branch, broke. We took pictures of it. It's like
crazy.
4 ants standing in front of, like, a giant log is us, essentially. And we kept saying, like, that was
representation.
That was the representation. The ancestors, the land was able to, they responded. Yeah. Even if it was just a random fall, but in my head, I'm like, oh no, we totally did that. Right. That was us. So to be able to see that effect, and then simultaneously at one of the shows, at one of the performances, an actual descendant of the family came and was like, you all have taught me something about my own family that I didn't know. Wow. And just this past Juneteenth, that whole family, the Hunter family, from different, all of them split from the enslaved people, all different iterations came together for, like, maybe the first time in years. Wow. And, like, acknowledged.
The ripples.
And to think that, wow, we were at least the people who brought the lens to this history. We may not have, like, pushed the whole agenda, but we, like you said, catalyst. We started the process and helped it enhance, and to see the effects of it now is like, whoa, I'm so thankful.
Right. Yeah. That's crazy. And I know you did, and I know you do a lot of reading and research for not just in your manuscripts, but poetry as well, which is something that I haven't done a lot of.
Get ready.
Yeah. And so, like, what is that thought process behind research for you as pertains to especially performance pieces? Because you don't have to.
Right, you don't.
Right. But what does it do for you, and what do you think it does for the audience for you to actually research to write a piece?
Yeah, I think one of the things is it keeps me grounded. because I can be out there with my words. I
Right.
can take people on like esoteric journeys.
This is true.
And we're gonna be like, I don't know what he's saying, but it sounds cool.
Right.
So to be able to have factual evidence and truth and that as a foundation point means that no matter how far out I go, I can always come back to what is set in stone.
Right.
You can't erase, like, that was the line in the piece, is like, you cannot erase us. You cannot erase us, essentially. And like, history is there.
Right.
The data that I sift through gives it also, it gives it an educational feel. And that's what I've learned with some of the performance pieces I've done, especially when it pertains to like Dorothea Dix and some of the other areas, is like, it's taking these bits of information and finding a way to make it digestible
Right.
and tangible for a general audience to understand. It's like, yes, I'm learning at the same time, like, oh, I did not know that there were 950 bodies buried next to the flower fields in Dorothea Dix.
Right.
Neither does a lot of people. But now that I know that information, how can I use the language? How can I start telepathically
Yeah.
infecting somebody else with this information? And I don't want to make it where it's like I'm a teacher,
Right.
and you have to look at the board to get the lesson. It's more of,
a
I'm going to present you.
transference.
Yep. And then I'm going to give you the space to be able to start processing it on your own.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how like the real teaching kind of like works itself out.
Man, you stretching me just in my writing process, because I've been writing for a long time, but seriously writing not long at all. And I look at people like yourself and other people who do research on the topics that they're talking about, and not just only pull from their experiences and what they know, which goes back to, we think we know.
Exactly.
Right. That's dope.
And it makes it more general too, because like you said right there, is that history, everybody can go look up these facts.
Right.
It's not just me and my own opinions.
Yeah.
And yes, my opinions might be good on certain things, especially if it's pertaining to me personally. But if it's a piece about the history of a location and I just talk about my own experience, I'm limiting not only my words, but I'm limiting what the audience can take away too, because I'm just rooted in myself. So that feels like low-key destructive.
Right.
Because your opinion is you.
Right.
And you're not giving them you, you're not giving the audience you plus the world. You're just
Right.
giving them you.
That's crazy. How old are you?
29. I know. I'm scratching 30 like I
Man,
see.
I'm just thinking I'm always, because I'm 38. I'll be 39 next year. And I'm thinking, I knew you were in your 20s. And when I was 29, my brain wasn't nowhere close to where your brain is. And I often, and now especially being in the creative world, because before I was just in the basketball world.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm always thinking like, man, like, had I been thinking like that since I was 25, since I was 19.
You ready to pull your hair out, trust me.
Then, how many more, but how much more impact could I have made? And then I look at people who are older than me, who are 45, who are 50, who are 55,
Right.
that from a judgy sense aren't necessarily where I am. And I'm like, man, how much impact have they missed out on? And then how much impact will I make between now and then that I wouldn't have made if I wasn't me now?
Right, there it is.
So, you got both sides of the coin where you're like, damn, I was stupid for a long time.
Low key, I'd be like, oh,
Right.
God, I don't really know who I was back then.
Right. Do we ever really know who we are?
No. Because, I mean, who we are is, again, just a collection of everything. Everything, and not just it's past, present, and future all at once. Like, that's what it means to be a human being, to be
Right.
the intersection of all three of those things. And that's just talking about the temporal aspect. That's not talking about lived experience, location,
Yeah.
nature, nurture, culture, like all of it.
It's crazy. I'm sitting here for the first time. I've done a few of these episodes now, and I always start off by asking people, who do you think you are? And I hadn't asked myself that question until just now.
Uh-oh.
Like literally in real time, I was like,
Uh-oh.
yo, you've never actually asked yourself that question.
You need to interview yourself.
Right. That would be very interesting.
Right. So, SP,
Right.
what do you think?
But it's crazy, and that's part of, for the selfish part, why I do this, because I know that if I'm sitting across from a Lee Chapman, if I'm sitting across from a, Jane Doe or whoever, that I'm gonna learn something about not just them, but I'm gonna learn something about me, or I'm gonna learn something that I need to interrogate about myself. And I mean, literally as you're talking, I'm like, I've never asked myself that question.
Mirrors.
I thought it was a dope question to start with.
It is.
Because it allows people to introduce themselves without saying, so, tell us your name and da-da-da, I can ask that, and I'm like, yo, that's a dope title for a podcast.
It's there.
And the whole time, I haven't even internally went in and said, hey, like, SP, like, who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are?
So that's definitely, if nothing else, and there's already been other things, but if nothing else, thank you for that, because I'll now kind of dig into my own brain a little bit and internalize some things.
And that's all it is, man. That's what I try and do in my art anytime is, and just life. I'm realizing is more than just art, but like to give people perspective.
Right.
That's how people change.
Right.
Like everybody thinks that you got to change somebody by like actively, tweaking and working with them. It's like, no, you have to give them the information. But they can't make a decision or do something different if they don't know that another different thing exists. And I have this belief about perspective. So like, for example, we both, if we're looking at the camera right there, I have a perspective that I see the camera from my point of view.
Right.
Your perspective is a different point of view, but we're both looking at the same thing. But now I can also say, my perspective is here, your perspective is there, but then I can also look at you and your perspective, and then I start realizing like, wow, there's two angles that we're seeing the same thing from.
Right.
And then there's this space between us, and then that doesn't even consider if somebody was back there,
Right.
and that's another perspective. So it's like, wow, when you start realizing that everything is low-key spherical,
Right.
that it can be looked at from a 360 degree.
And there's 360 million different angles that you can look from.
Exactly.
And then your interpretation based off of those perspectives and what you're actually seeing can be completely different. Then you mix in the experiences that the people have had. Yeah,
And that's why I just
crazy.
want to be adaptable, because it's like I know that there's going to be different situations that require a different angle. And that's, one of the things I learned from photography and videography is like, you look up, you look down,
Yeah.
you look left, you look small, you look large.
Right. And it was crazy because I remember you was like, yo, I'm interested to see like how certain things transform for you, because you're going to start seeing things from a different angle once you start really getting into shooting and things of that nature. And I've seen that, I've been able to look just at people through a different lens, if you will, and seeing the hurt on their face, or seeing the anguish, or them being upset, or them being happy and ecstatic, where before, I might see it with my own two eyes, but being able to look at it in real time, and then also going back and being able to look at it and be like, yo, like she was really feeling some kind of way about everything that was going on right there, and replay that back in my mind I know I use the word interesting. It is interesting, but it's eye-opening.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
Perspective.
eye-opening. Yeah. Right. Right.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. When did you start shooting? You said in college?
Yeah, I got my first camera. I take it back. As a kid, I can remember like fooling around my parents' digital camera, and we used to make like cheesy home movies with
Back
my
when
sister.
2.6 megapixels was the shit, right?
The kind that you hold like this.
Right.
Yeah. I can remember making like movies with like my sister's dollhouse and like Beanie Babies.
Right.
And so A lot of the things that I do now are things that I was doing as a child. I just, you know, I'm living out my inner child's dreams, I suppose, right now. And I can, like, when we go through like photographs in my family, like there's photographs that I took, because you can tell there's like from a lower angle and it's of both my parents. And it's like, well, I was the only other person who could take these. But I didn't start as an adult until I got my first camera in my senior year and started taking pictures around campus, but just like here and there, mostly at events and stuff and just to friends. Then I got the job at a photo studio, which was 2014, and I worked there till 2015.
You said that was the worst job you ever had?
Oh my God, it was the management. It was the worst management I've ever had. Like mall photography. That's what it was. Like I became a mall rat. And if you never worked in the mall, that's a whole different culture. Oh my gosh, you live off of the
food there.
The food there.
Yeah.
You recognize certain people. But it was like first birthdays and all these other things, like engagements and high school graduation. So I learned a lot of the technicalities of shooting, and I learned how to edit. And I think that's one of the things that really stood me apart as a photographer for, like, as a time, was I knew how to edit. Whereas a lot of people just like boost up the saturation for no reason and overexpose. And it's like, no. It's got to be subtle. It's got to be all these little things to highlight and bring it to life. But then after I got the experience with that, I was like, well, I got my own camera. Let me start like doing it on my own and freelance. And I can remember like one of the first real group shots I did was like of a sorority at UNC Charlotte. And then I started doing like graduation photos, and that's when I started charging. And that's when one of those things is learning, like, you can make money off the art, and you should, because you're doing a service. You're laboring, and you're giving time and energy. And not only that, but like, I'm giving you my ideas as a photographer. And that's what other people don't get, is like, oh, well, you know, we can just get a camera and take the pictures too. It's like, go ahead. And see what you come up with. Go ahead. You're gonna be pissed because you're not gonna know how to pose. You're not gonna know what the shutter speed needs to be. But I do. And I have the vision on top of the technology to do it. So that's when I got into it. And I've always wanted to do films. So like, it was just
Have
a
you
nice
made a
segue.
film yet?
I have made a film before.
You made a short film,
I made a short film, yeah.
How long was it?
17 minutes.
17 minutes.
It was a horror story.
Horror
story called Vindica. Be careful what you smoke. That was the tagline. Yeah. It was,
what does the title mean?
Vindica means revenge.
Gotcha.
But we also had a play on words, because it was about like, basically like, it was a short about a drug dealer who was just being a dumbass, essentially. And you come to find out that he had been involved in like the murdering of a guy who had like his own strain, like another competitor in the field.
Gotcha.
And then when you smoke this particular strain, this phantom would come back and like pull up on you, kind of like some Freddy Krueger type stuff. So I was like, yeah, let's just do Freddy Krueger and weed. So Indica,
Freddy Krueger and weed.
Indica, it just worked out well. And it was like it was all grassroots. Like me and some of my friends that I went to high school with was just like, hey, look, I got the script. You got a place. We got our actors. Let's just do what we can. And I mean, it's telling. It was 2017. I was super thankful to just have it done. But like the opening scene started out with like a blowjob. And it was in black and white.
A black and white blowjob.
Oh my God. And I showed my grandma this film on Thanksgiving like 2 years ago. And I was like, yeah, Grandma, I just wanted to make a film. I just wanted to start a
What was her response?
She was, I think she liked the fact that I was able to create it. She didn't really like it like that. That was just, it was, again, I love horror, I love sci-fi. Those are certain elements. We needed to quickly establish that he was a scumbag. How else do you do that? By showing that he's cheating on his girl.
There you go.
Easy way to show he's a scumbag.
What's your fascination with horror? Because I get the sci-fi part.
Fear.
Fear.
Fear is such a powerful emotion. Like, people think that love and hate are opposites, but it's actually fear and love. Like, hate is just a form of love because you're still thinking about that person in a certain way. But fear has driven humanity almost more than anything else. Like if you really go back and look through the course of human history, fear is what caused the, I want to say like colonization and genocide. Fear is what causes dynasties to fall. Fear is what causes people to not even live their own lives. Like fear is so strong. And I remember growing up like Saturday morning horror on Sci-Fi Channel, like B-rated monster movies. So like some of those lines that you hear from my poems, like I have a whole poem about like, it's called An Ode to My Niggas Who Got Out Alive. And it's about black folk who survived horror situations.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's like growing up on all that, seeing the effect that horror has, and also realizing that other genres, you're constrained in what you can introduce and put into the story before it becomes too fantastical or less believable. Right. Horror, you can do whatever you want. You want a zombie? Guess what? You can have a zombie. You want a wizard who comes from space who like can zap people? You got it. You want to talk about genetically engineered creatures that like are Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like a great horror film. But like, I don't know, I think one of my favorites is like Alien, Ridley Scott's Alien. Oh my God, like just being in space, being locked in a old ship and thinking about how the alien came to life. It came to life from an egg, jumping onto somebody's face. An embryo gets put into the human being. And the scene that changed the game for movies is when John Hurt, they're all sitting at the table, and he just falls down and starts convulsing. And next thing you know, the baby alien bursts from his chest. And I loved it because they talk behind the scenes that the actors did not know how the alien was going to be introduced. All in the script it said was the alien appears. So they did not know it was busting from his chest with blood squirting everywhere. So their reaction is completely natural. Wow. Fear. And just seeing what that movie did, and oh man, it's so great. So I feel like it's just a playground for my imagination. Like I can pull the most extreme stuff and be like, yeah.
Got you. From the horror films.
From the horror films.
Man, I've never been big into horror films, but now you got me like, maybe I should go watch a few horror films and really explore the fear side of it, because I think it's interesting that you were saying like love and hate aren't necessarily the opposites. It's love and fear, and hate is actually a form of love. Mm-hmm.
And it's more than just supernatural. I think that's what people get confused. Is like horror gets associated with like ghosts and haunted houses and spirits. And I'm like, nah, like, have you seen The Thing though? Like, that movie will change the way. I haven't
seen that either.
Yeah. Look, I got a list for you, so.
I'm gonna have to get to that list.
Yes, it'll change your.
So how do you feel about like Jordan Peele's work?
I like his stuff because it's a breath of fresh air in horror, but I'm also like, it's social horror. Right. It's like, it's got these undertones to it. And me, I like a good old fashioned like monster and gore and like people losing their minds. Yeah. So I enjoyed it. I love the lane that he's carved, but honestly, I think right now he's probably the only one doing it. Like Lena Waithe's Them, I know she didn't write it, but she was the executive producer.
I haven't seen Them yet. But I know Lena Waithe is though, but
Them was like a re-triggering kind of experience because it's like black people in the 50s in Compton, and they tagged it as a horror, but I'm 3 episodes in and I'm like, I have not seen one horrific situation. All I've seen is like itchy stuff that got under my skin, and being uncomfortable and being afraid are 2 different things. Right. And I was like, I feel more uncomfortable watching this than afraid. But like, Get Out, I'm afraid for my guy when he takes the tea and is like, oh, you're in the sunken place? Right. We ain't never seen that before.
Never seen that, yeah.
Never seen it. And us with the doppelgangers and the shadows, like,
that was crazy.
Those are the elements of fear. You want to make people scared. You want to make them experience a feeling that they will not always experience in real life. That's the cool thing about watching horror movies. You're never going to be in a horrific situation like this, but you can experience it from that point of view.
Right.
So I'm here for it. If you wanted to like throw me something, I'd be like, sign me up. JP, what's good, bro?
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have you watched what's the TV series? They only just had one series, and Journey is in it. Journey.
Oh, Lovecraft?
Yeah. Did you watch Lovecraft?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I figured you did.
Oh, yeah. And that was another great example of horror with black folk in it. And
Yeah.
people might not call it a horror. No, that was a horror
Yeah.
show from episode 1
Right.
till the end. It was, and again, it was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
It was nice to see. It was nice to see that also it wasn't all wrapped around black trauma.
Right.
Because that's one other thing that I don't like seeing in movies.
Mm.
I really like Antebellum. I know that was.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
I didn't need to see it.
Yeah.
I don't need to see black folk on a plantation no more. Like, we have so many more stories to tell. So to see Lovecraft like bring to life, like, they're throwing monsters from like Cthulhu mythos, and then they're having magic spells and
Right.
black people with magic and time travel, and then Afrofuturism, all in
the
10
same-
episodes.
right.
You're like, it's a lot, but it opened the door to show you what is possible when you give black writers a space to do what they want without
And
the
then they canceled it.
constraints. Yeah, I know.
Of course.
I know. I was
Somebody
like,
has to pick it up.
it's gonna get picked up again. It might
Yeah.
be a while, but like tensions are hot.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's low-key like a new Jim Crow movement just like happening subtly in the United States. Like a lot of things that black people have been, part of, or there's just a couple hands pushing down
Yeah.
very slowly. But I mean, hey, look, they want me to write an episode.
Hey, so you
Sign
did,
me
right?
up. Sign me up.
That would be dope. When those things start happening, you know what I'm saying? Because it's crazy. You know, we were talking about it, how like groups of segments of people that are either super famous or super wealthy or just known within their craft. Like you find out they all were like around each other at a certain point. They lived in the same areas. They knew the same people. They went to the same clubs and shows, et cetera, et cetera. And so like, waking up one day and it's like, oh yeah, Lee's writing, everybody's going crazy. Lee's writing an episode for, Lovecraft. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That makes sense.
That's how artists and philosophers, and that's another thing I study. I love reading philosophy. And that's how they all used to get together. They would go to like a bar or a coffee house and would sit and just exchange ideas. And then they would all go their separate ways. And then you realize like, wow, it boils back to what we were talking about in the beginning, the community.
Right.
They had a community of like-minded individuals to be
Right.
able to work their thoughts and their ideas out, and then would go spread it with the rest of the world. And then you find out like, oh, y'all used to like hit the bars together? Like, whoa.
I didn't know that.
That's how they used to be before all this, like 1700s. It's always been about like that close-knit connection.
Wow. So if somebody was writing a book on your life right now, and they were saying, the Lee Chapman philosopher, what philosophy would they put under your name?
I like my favorite school of philosophy is existentialism.
Okay.
Which is this belief that the norm is that essence before existence. So this concept that you were created for a purpose and then you exist. Existentialism is you exist and then you create the essence for your life. You
Right.
create the purpose for your life after you have discovered that you exist.
And so I believe that and didn't know that that's the word for
There
it.
it is.
Because I've heard the word before, never looked it up, never, whatever.
When people talk about existential dread, it's got its own connotation, but really it boils down to you exist and you acknowledge your existence before you add an essence or a purpose or a belief to your life.
Right.
And for me, that clicked so much. Like, if we're born a blank slate,
Right.
yes, we have all these things that are pushed into us, but still, it is a blank slate. I get to choose what my destiny is. I get to choose what my purpose is. I love the concept of fate, but also I'm sometimes like, fuck fate. Like,
Yeah.
it's cool, but I'd rather take it into my own hands.
And I was gonna ask you about that because I don't believe in fate. And I go back and forth with it. Like me and Janelle, we talk all the time, and she's just like, well, how do you explain how these things just lined up? And I'm like, I can't explain it, but I don't subscribe to fate in the sense of this is what was supposed to happen, and it was going to happen no matter what I did, because I feel like, you know, every action there's an opposite, you know, equal reaction, and so those people say everything happens for a reason. I'm like, the reason is because you did this,
chose.
or you chose this, or somebody chose that, and that's why something happened.
Yeah, you got that free will kind of like me. It's like I struggle with that so much, because like certain things will pop up in my life and I'm like, wow, it really is almost like my story is being written.
Right.
But then I'm also like, but at the same time, I've chosen to make the decision. I've chosen to do this. And what really screwed me up was when I at like 26, I started looking into like soul and reincarnation and astrology.
Okay.
And when I lined up my signs, I was like, damn it, I didn't even choose to be a writer. The stars all got it for me. Well, I don't care. I'm my own writer. And I'm like, oh God, it's complex.
Thwarted everything that you thought.
Right. I'm like, no, maybe I have the wrong birthday. I don't know, but yeah, I go back and forth. And I think there's fate, but I think there's also like the free will and the ability to choose, because, you know, if you start believing in like a multi-universe, there's me's who didn't choose to do certain things. There's a me who died in that car accident.
Wow.
You know, and my story got cut in that universe right then and there. But me, I got to live through it and then go through this. And maybe that's what dreams
There's
are.
other me's in the universe.
Heck yeah, the other me's that are out there. I always am like, shit, I wonder what the other me's up to right now. Probably cutting a fool.
I've never thought about the other me's.
Every moment you have a choice. Every single moment there's a choice to act. And with every choice, there's an opposite choice, like you were saying. So it's like, if I choose this, there's a version of me that chose the other thing. There's a version of me that chose this and that. And then it's just like it's like those diagrams for evolution, where it starts out at one point, but then it just branches into everything else. And then you realize, like, that's all me from the beginning. Every choice that I've made has opened a different door. And I do believe that, you know, like, every choice there's a split. I don't think it's as dramatic as like the world cutting in half and then like, whoop, there goes the other one. Although that would be really cool, like if you made a choice and like your body split and y'all went two different ways. That's a good sci-fi story.
Right. Yeah, I remember reading books as a kid where, based on whatever you want to choose at the end of the chapter, then, okay, if you chose A, then turn to page 73.
Right.
And then that took you through a whole different journey of the book,
right,
than if you had chose B.
Right.
And
choose your own adventure.
And I thought those books were so interesting, but I had never, until now, paralleled them to what could possibly be in the actual physical realm of the universe.
Because we really still don't know. We don't know nothing about nothing. We don't even know what goes on in our brain. Right. So to think, like, for us to be so like prideful to think that we know how all of reality works is like, come on, really? Y'all don't really want to like believe that, do you? There's so much more. And that's why I like video games, especially like open world games where you get to choose how you approach the game.
Right.
Like, yeah, maybe I do want to follow the main quest and do this, but maybe I want to go like into this village, and maybe there's a side quest in this village that's gonna take me on a whole nother roller coaster and lead me to like 5-6 different quests, and I might level up over there.
Right.
And then I can take all my leveling up experiences and then go back to my main quest. But just being able to say, like, at least I have the option to not have to follow one straight path, and that's what fate feels like. It's like you're here and it's linear, and I'm like, oh, boring. Like, let me divvy a little bit.
Right. That's interesting. I haven't played video games in forever.
Oh, look, a lot of people believe this, and I am agreed to, but I think video games are the highest form of art right now.
Why so?
It's audio.
Okay.
It's visual. It's written because there's storytelling. And then the thing that other art doesn't have is it's immersive. Movies, you're a spectator.
Yeah.
But a video game, you have control over your character, your decisions, the way that they even look. Like I'm playing one of my favorite series right now called Mass Effect, and like you can create your character,
Right.
you can choose how they respond in conversation, and in this game, those choices have actual results.
Wow.
So like some things that you choose, actions that you choose in the first game will affect how the third game gets played out. You want to eliminate this race of aliens, they're never going to be there in the third to help you when you need them. So like to think that level of immersion,
Right.
it's the future. I definitely think so.
And see, my dumbass 29-year-old self was just playing 2K all damn day.
See, yeah. The only sports game I play is FIFA.
Okay,
That is
of
the only
course,
one, but
yeah.
I'm definitely playing like storytelling, immersive games, Japanese RPGs, because they're called role-playing games.
Right.
You get to create a role and then live it out, whatever
Yeah.
that case may be. And that's how I get some of my writing ideas too.
I think if I ever started playing those types of games, I would never come outside.
Hello.
I would probably never do anything, because when I did play video games a lot, like I said, I did play sports games, but I was big on Splinter Cell.
Oh yeah.
I was never big on Halo, because Halo, you come out, you just shoot and everything. I mean, there's a storyline behind it, but Splinter Cell, you had to be strategic. You had to, if you got right outside the shadow into the light and the guard saw you, then there's a whole trigger of events that happens, and you got to, you know what I'm saying? And so I always liked those types of games.
You need to play Hitman.
So I remember playing I used to play that as well.
You need to play Hitman.
And so like the games that you're talking about, that RPG is what you said?
RPGs, yeah.
And that stands for what again?
Role-playing game.
Role-playing game.
Yep.
If I started doing that, I would be stuck forever.
Oh, I know. I hate to admit that, like, not hate to, but like one RPG game called Persona 5 Royal, I put 120 hours into it last year. 120 hours. Because it's literally, you get to choose almost everything you want in that game.
Right.
And it was just so immersive. The story was so great. And, you think about it, again, not only am I experiencing the story, but I'm immersed in it because I have control.
Right.
And that's the thing that other art forms don't have. Music, you can listen to it. Pictures, visual stuff, you can see it.
Right.
Even movies, again, you can see and hear and experience the writing. But when you can give somebody a chance to like leave this and go into the screen,
Right.
oh, you put them in a place they've never been there before.
Which is why VR is going to be so big and huge. Because when you start taking those types of games and making them VR, where even the technology now is crazy, but once they really like perfect that technology, and it really feels like if somebody throws you out of a plane, you feel like you're actually falling.
Yes.
It's gonna be nuts.
Yes. 2045. We're not too far.
We're not too far, and it may be here before then.
Yeah.
Especially with some of this, like I got an Oculus.
Exactly.
And
my uncle got one of those.
Yeah, I saw. A matter of fact, I saw you put it up on your story.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Have you watched a live event on it yet?
No, I haven't.
I watched a live UFC fight on it, and literally like you're standing ringside, and they're right there where that plant is
And you're
fighting.
just-
Right, and I can look and I can see the lights and I can see the referee outside the ring, and then you interact with the people who are also there watching from London
Right.
and Italy and Australia. Like it's just crazy the things that technology has done. Like you were talking about, a computer being the size of a room years ago. And I remember, I'm old enough to remember using rotary phones.
Yeah, like that's a thing.
And pay phones. So I remember the first time a phone had a camera on it. And like I think now, something as simple as picking up your phone, going online, ordering a pizza, and then it shows up at your house. Like that's actually mind blowing. Like
mind-blowing.
It's normal and rudimentary, but it's mind blowing that you can do that.
40 years ago, it was never a conceivable idea. You telling me I can have, wait till drones are dropping things off for us too.
And Amazon's trying to get it where the predictive technology, where they predict what you're gonna buy before you buy it.
So
So by the time you press buy, it's already in a drone's hand on its way to your house.
Yeah, they see you eye that, they're like, all right, get K17 ready to go, because unit 2, 3, 3, 4, 8, 7 is ready to purchase.
Right. And we already know based off of all the buying habits that they're actually gonna purchase it today.
Yeah, algorithms. The algorithms. I love technology, but I also hate it as well because of those different things. It's like, you talk about fate and things being predetermined. That is exactly what an algorithm is. It is predetermining our decisions. And I watched The Social Dilemma, which is a great thing.
Yeah, I saw that joint. It was
talking
dope.
about how it changes behavior, not just like your thought process, but behavior. And that's what human beings are. We're a collection of our behaviors over time.
Indeed. Yeah, The Social Dilemma was, and I knew some of the stuff, but a lot of it, I'm like, I didn't think of it like that. And it's so real.
You should read some of his other stuff. The guy's name is Jaron Lanier. I read, I think, 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media. Woo! It was scary. I mean, I still got mine, but I take breaks from it. But he was like, yeah, be conscious about like how often you use, what data you put out there, all that other stuff.
What makes you take breaks from social media? Because I noticed you take breaks. I know there's been a couple times I'll just hit you, yo, you good? You know, I ain't seen you in a minute, just checking in.
Yeah.
Because we're so used to having access to people through social media that sometimes we don't check on them because, oh, we know they're good. They posted a picture. They were eating pizza.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But then when you don't see somebody on social media for 2 weeks, the first thing you think is, oh, something's wrong.
Right.
But most times it's not. It's just, yo, I'm good on this particular way of communicating right now.
Yeah.
So what happens during your social media breaks?
Yeah, I think part of the idea of taking social media hiatus came from like going online when I was in college. Like we had to like, you know, clear ourselves from social media.
Right.
And that was fine. It was from like maybe Thanksgiving weekend to like March. So
Okay.
the concept of going off the grid for like 3 months or going ghost is something that was ingrained in me. And I realized like, one, it's a recalibration moment. It's a chance for me to step away from society and everything that it's always being pushed on us through social media. Because it does affect us, completely affects us. So to be able to like sit with me, my thoughts, myself, and my ideas, and just the world that is immediately within my vicinity, it gives me that good grounding. It's also a good time to focus. Like when it comes to me writing new manuscripts, I realize I mostly write in the wintertime. Like when I want to bring something brand new to life, like it's wintertime writing.
Right.
And again, from like November to March, because March is when my birthday is. So I put myself in this state where it's like, focus, 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 focus. And you don't realize how much time, not just time that you spend on social media, but again, how much energy and thought process is going to things that you saw on social media versus things that are happening in your normal life. Your writing starts to get affected by the stuff that you see on the internet. And then I'm like, am I writing literally what I want to, or am I writing based on because I saw somebody post about this? And now that's low-key invaded and infected. And I think it's just a breathing moment, because human beings did not have this.
Right.
Human beings for centuries and millennia have lived without social media, but it's almost, again, going back to what we talked, the conditioned idea that if you're not on social media, you're not a person. Like that technology piece I have, the last line is like, I'm afraid to share what I feel online because I'll only be seen as a post and not a person.
Yeah.
And like just to constantly think about, wow, my worth is dependent on what am I exposing to the world.
Right.
What am I putting out there? And it ain't even really it's not everything true to how my life is.
Right.
It's me curating it
Curated.
to show you, sometimes it's the good. I give people the honest take. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's rough, but like, again, it's still thinking that you chose to put this up there.
Right.
You chose what not to put up there. You chose to do this, but to say like, hey, look, I just want some me time, clean myself up, get focused, get ready. And then once I hit it again, I have more appreciation for the way I move through social media as well.
Yeah, I've never taken a social media sabbatical. I'm not. I say I don't really care about social media. That's not 100% true. I'm not overwhelmed by social media.
Yeah, big difference.
I'm not. I don't think I've ever been overwhelmed by social media to the point where I'm like, yo, I might need to let this go for a little while. But I'm also wondering if I did take a sabbatical, even if it was just a week.
Yeah.
Like, what would that look like? And the first thing that goes to my mind is like, I'm thinking about business. You know what I mean? Because I am a new artist, essentially. And I'm trying to get things to a certain place. And of course, social media is where everybody's attention is, majoritarily speaking. And making sure that I'm top of mind in that way is important, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, what does that do if I step away? Like, do I announce that I'm stepping away? Do I just step away? Like, do people really fucking care if I'm not up there for a week and a half and I come back? Like, what does that look like for me? And I think until now, I've never even thought about a sabbatical.
I say give it a 2-week trial period. Like, I do 3 months now, but like that wasn't how I originally started. Like,
Right.
But I realized that 3 months, especially at the end of the year to the beginning
Right.
of the year, for me it's such a great time because I'm closing a chapter and I'm opening a new one, and I'm only responsible and caring about what is within my immediate vicinity. Going off of social media doesn't mean that I'm not going to talk to the people I want to talk to.
Right, of course.
But it makes it even more intentional if
Yeah.
I'm reaching out to you. Because it isn't just, hey, I saw you post on your story, so now let me talk to you. It's like, hey, look, I woke up and I thought about you today.
Right.
And I want to talk to you today. Or maybe I send you the message and we talk later on this week.
Yeah.
It's more intention. And that's what I like to do from it, get that intention.
Gotcha. And I feel like I am intentional with that. Even like I'll reach out to people to check on them, even if I haven't seen a post, or maybe I know they're still on social media, haven't taken a sabbatical or whatever, but I still try to make sure I'm intentional because I did grow up in that era where there wasn't any like social media. When I was a real kid, I remember playing Oregon Trail on Apple computer. It's one of the greatest games of all time. And so
shooting them ducks.
yo, listen, I always wanted the buffalo. Let me hit the
Let me
buffalo.
get the buffalo.
And if you die of typhoid fever, you're gonna cry. Like, that's just what it is. But I've always been real intentional about my relationships with people, friendships and or otherwise. I've told a couple people like, yo, the last Inspired show, there was 3 people that I went to kindergarten with. And I'm 38. So you talking about almost 30 years ago. And we're not like the best friends of all time, but I keep in touch with them. I know what's going on with their lives. They know what's going on with mine, and they thought enough to come out and support.
Yeah.
Monetarily, you know what I mean?
That
Not just
too.
with their physical presence. So I've always been intentional about that, and I always make sure that I'm able to understand that there's a way to make an impact just by checking on somebody.
Yes, and it's interesting because I grew up. I call myself a guinea pig to social media because like I remember getting like AOL in 6th grade. I
Right.
can remember like the internet becoming the big thing that it was. But I also have experiences of like go outside and just ride bikes, crush soda cans,
Right.
put them in your bike.
Right.
Now you got a dirt bike.
Me and my brother was just talking last night. We used to make cakes with mud and dirt. So we would have the chocolate cake had like the mud on it. We would have regular cakes that had to dry, but then we would have like a lighter soil that we would sprinkle on. That would be our sprinkles and things of that nature. We used to do crazy stuff like that. I used to play football. I used to play catch with myself. I would literally throw the football and then run. Like I would throw it hard and then run and then catch it.
Look,
Kids
I
don't do
get
that now.
Yeah, running through the sprinklers. Like, when's the last time you seen somebody run through some
And
sprinklers?
it's crazy you say that. Just yesterday in Greensboro at this park where Josephus had the Poetry of the Park,
Right.
they had the water coming up out the ground like in the city, and kids just run. I'm like, yo, I haven't seen this in person in probably 25, 30 years almost.
And that was almost like a daily thing for us, like
Right.
growing up, especially here in the South. For me, it's like out in Fuquay, like I can remember the sprinkler going,
Yep. Yep.
and you're running to try and avoid it, and you're hopping over.
That's
and
it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Things are so different now. Man, this has been good. I've definitely, like I said, I've learned some things about you. I've learned some things that I need to learn about myself.
Hey, who are you?
Right. Who am I? I'm gonna have to. Yeah, we're gonna get to that at some point. In the beginning, I asked you, who do you think you are? So now, as we wrap up, my final question is, who do you think you will be?
I want to be whoever I need to be for whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, don't want to have a sleeve tattoo. A couple books to my name, all that other stuff. Absolutely, but like, wherever life takes me, I just want to continue to be that person. And I don't know who it's gonna be.
Right.
But I trust. My thing about procrastination, I have this belief about procrastination, is that the current me trusts the future me
Right.
enough to do what needs to be done.
Right.
The current me might not know everything, but I have enough trust in myself in this moment to make the right decisions so that future me is ready to do whatever the future me needs to be done.
Yeah.
So as long as I keep doing what I do now, then whoever I am gonna be is gonna be good, because I took advantage of this time and this moment. Like the golden moments is my name, but that's
Right.
it goes a whole much more than that. So I think futurely, if you're watching this, I know you did what you needed to do.
Right.
And I thank you, because I'm doing what I need to do. And a lot of my journal entries are written like that too. Like me talking to myself in the future, knowing good and well that at some point in the future, I am coming back to read it.
Yeah.
And to be like, well, I did manifest that. I did see that happen. Or I didn't see that pop up, but it was cool that it did.
Right. That's what's up. Yo, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem.
And,
Thanks for this.
We'll see y'all on the next episode of Who Do You Think You Are?
Who do you think you are?